Hi everybody, my name is Johnny Zivku. I'm a product manager here at MapleSoft, and I'm going to talk to you today about the Maple TA MAA Placement Test Suite, specifically version 2016. So let me just start by talking about the history of this product between MapleSoft and the MAA. The MAA, which is the Mathematical Association of America, they have been delivering written-based placement tests for decades. And about 10 years ago, in about 2005, they wanted to take their paper-based tests and turn them into an online digital format. So rather reinvent the wheel and create their own online tool for assessment, they looked at vendors who already had this functionality. And they looked at MapleSoft's solution, and they liked what they saw. Specifically, they enjoyed that MapleSoft had a solution geared for STEM courses, so it seemed like a natural fit given that the MAA delivers these math-based placement tests. So, through some conversations and various meetings, the Maple TA MAA Placement Test Suite was born. This is a collaboration between MapleSoft and the MAA. This is, in the simplest way to explain it to you, is Maple TA, which is our online assessment tool by MapleSoft, but it comes pre-bundled with all the placement tests from the MAA. So it comes with pre-made content for placement testing that uses the Maple TA engine for delivery. So the core points here are quite obvious, but it's easy to administer. I mean, when you purchase this product, you get everything you need for placement testing right out of the box. No need to configure or create or worry about programming or anything. It's all done for you. The results as well are graded instantly. So all the tests from the MAA have been configured to be graded automatically when the students finish their placement test. And placement can be done before scheduling. So if you want students to take this placement test before they arrive on campus or their first week so that they can enroll in the proper courses, that can be accommodated. And in terms of the delivery method, I mean, they can do it from home, they can do it from a placement testing center, they can do it on campus. We offer various options for making your placement testing experience very slick and very easy. So let me talk about the key features of the actual content itself. So I'm going to focus on the content that the MAA has made for Maple TA first. So they have three different types of tests. They have a standard test, a calculator test, and an algorithmic test. And I'll explain the difference in a few minutes. But each test is already made available as a built-in assignment in Maple TA. As I mentioned before, all these placement tests are also graded automatically and instantly by Maple TA system. The results are stored in the Maple TA gradebook where they can be analyzed and searched and manipulated and exported as much as you want. All the questions from the MAA also feature standard math notation, so math looks the way it should in Maple TA. It looks like they would read in a textbook or write by hand, on chalkboard. We don't use any cryptic syntax. They can read it and understand it with no problems. And we offer various different types of license solutions for your campus. So we have what's called a MapleSoft hosted solution, definitely our most popular solution for Placement Test Suite. This is where we set up your server for Placement Test Suite. We take care of the hardware, we schedule maintenance when needed, we upgrade as required, we take care of all the technical things for you. But we also have this locally run solution. This is where we give your school the installation files for Placement Test Suite, and they install it on their own server, and your IT department will maintain it themselves. Both options are available for whatever delivery mechanism and installation mechanism you'd like. Now let me go back to this idea of standard versus calculator-based versus algorithmic. Let me first talk about standard and calculator-based test. So each test has been carefully balanced and tested by the MAA. They have done field testing all across North America. They make sure that they can provide consistent and reliable results. Now these tests are static. So if a student has one version, the next student and the next student and the next student, they all have the exact same version, exact same questions, exact same order, everything is exactly the same. Now, we do offer parallel versions of these tests though, so that you can actually have version 1, 2, 3, or 4. Now, We also have for these standard and calculator-based versions. That means that these tests can either be taken with or without a calculator, depending on what you like. Now, one thing to mention is each of these tests are between 30 and 45 minutes in length, and they all contain between 25 and 32 multiple choice questions. Now, let's talk about the algorithmic tests. So each question here contains one or more variables whose values are randomly chosen according to constraints. This means that the test, every single question, will be slightly different for each student. They each get their own randomized version of the same problem. Now, these are based on the original ones that we used in the previous slide to create the parallel versions, as you see in point 2 there. But the point of the algorithmic test is that this is the type of test you would use when you want students to have different versions. The same content, just slightly different versions. Now, the topics covered are listed here. Each placement test covers one of these topics. So, arithmetic and skills, basic algebra, algebra, advanced algebra, trig and elementary functions, calc readiness, calculus concepts readiness, algebra and pre-calculus concepts readiness, and lastly, high school prognostics. So every placement test from the MAA covers one single topic here. So you pick and choose which ones pertain most to your curriculum. Now you'll notice here that we have two specific tests. We have the calculus concepts and algebra pre-calculus concepts. And you might be wondering, well, how are these different from the other algebra tests or the calculus readiness test? And these are more modern. These are the newest placement tests that the MAA has made. These have been created in response to modern research. They have been pilot tested. They're just another option for calculus placement testing. They have done more testing to find the types of questions to ask, and they have found that rather than test students on actual calculus questions, test them on the concepts of calculus that are needed to succeed in the first year course of calculus. So it's a little bit different, still similar to the old calculus readiness test, but it's more focused on the concepts needed to succeed in calculus. Same with the algebra and pre-calc concepts. It's different because, and this is actually the most newest one, came out in 2015. This evaluates the student's understanding of foundational concepts of algebra and pre-calc. It determines if a students have a good understanding of the math concepts needed to succeed in first year. It doesn't test them, do they know the topics that are going to be taught in first year? It's do they know what the foundations to succeed in those courses in first year? So it's a little bit different. Obviously, there is some overlap of question types, but through the research and different field tests and MAA has done, they've released these two tests: the algebra and pre-calculus concepts readiness test and the calculus concepts readiness test. Now, let me switch gears and talk about features that actually enhance the placement test suite. So I'm talking about the Maple TA features that make the placement test suite content better. So as I mentioned before, Maple TA, which is what MapleSoft has created and maintained and releases updates every year, this is the delivery tool for the MAA content, which is the placement testing content. So MapleSoft does not own the placement testing content. The MAA does, and they take care of it because they're the experts. We, on the other hand, are experts on technology and how to make STEM education better through technology. So let me talk about what features we have for Maple TA to make the placement test suite better. First, we have an updated interface. We have made improvements in Maple TA 2016 to make it better. We have listened to different customers and teachers as to different things that they found could be made better in our system, and we have done that in our software. We also have this thing called the Maple TA Proctored Browser. This keeps students inside of Maple TA. So when they start a placement test, they can't go to other websites or other programs or navigate elsewhere. They are inside of this browser mode, and if they choose to leave, they need to get proctor permission to go back into the placement test. Now, in terms of getting students inside of the placement test suite, there are a few different things you can do. The one that you see listed here, Easy Roster Importing, is the most popular. This is where you upload a roster file, which is made in Excel, that contains all your student information. You can also get these roster files from your existing learning management systems or content management systems. Of course, we also have different ways to register users, whether you want to just add them yourself manually, or even have what's called self-registration. Students go to Maple TA, create their own accounts, go to their class themselves, and take their test. I find, depending on how you want to deliver your placement test, whether it's mandatory, optional, whether it be on campus or from home, user registration can vary. So it takes some thought and consideration to figure out the best method for you. Now, we also connect to your existing course management systems, and we do this through LTI. We support, Moodle, Blackboard, Canvas, Sakai, Brightspace, and many other systems that support LTI. This is so you can actually deliver a placement test from Maple TA inside of your existing system. So students don't have to log in some other location. They don't have to learn another platform or user interface. They don't have to point and click lots of times. They can just take the placement test, for example, from Canvas or from Moodle, and it just integrates directly into your platform. It's definitely the most smoothest and definitely becoming the most preferred method for using our placement test suite. Now, in terms of administration features, you can customize the interface to match your school's colors and branding. You can customize different roles for different people on your campus, and you can of course customize all sorts of features using the admin features in placement test suite. Now, in terms of the actual assignment features, so each placement test is available as an assignment in Maple TA. But you can customize the assignment policies. You can choose which questions and from different placement tests and make your own placement test using the questions from PTS. We have adaptive assignments. We have targeted, in which they can take it multiple times and only answer questions they got wrong on previous attempts. You can choose to display student information on every page. You can impose IP address or hostname restrictions. You can customize pass-fail feedback, so if they pass or fail, they receive different feedback and different messages from the instructor on what to do next. You can even provide hints for the questions if you want. You can, we give you over 60 pre-made placement tests, but you have the option to customize these tests, to make changes to the policies, the feedback options, the security features. You can even remove or add questions. We give you that option. Now, once students finish the placement testing, maybe the period's over, you can view all the data in the Maple TA gradebook, and all this data is available. You can create reports, you can drill down to more detail, you can view all responses to a single test item, you can see different item stats and biennial coefficients and different averages for your classes. The gradebook is the place to go after the students have completed the placement tests. And if you just want to view the questions individually ahead of time, you can do that all through the content repository. This is where you go to view all your questions from the MAA. There are over 1,000 to look at and to view and to analyze. It's all really easy to see. We give you flexible tools for organizing your question content. Now, I want to jump into a demonstration of the actual in-product, how does Maple TA work? How do these placement tests work? So let me jump into that right now. I'm just going to go to my browser here. I'm just going to let me just log out and show you the main page. So what you see here, this is Maple TA. Students simply go to their browser, they log in, and they go to Maple TA. Maple TA is strictly a web-based application. There's no need for plugins or add-ons or packages they have to install or have on their desktop before they can use Maple TA and PTS. It just works in your browser, and that's why Maple TA works on lots of devices. Not only your computer or your laptop or your Ultrabook, also works on your smartphone or your tablet like an iPad or Android device. But when a student gets here, they log in with their account, they go to their class for placement testing. So I'll go to my placement testing. Let me just zoom in a little bit too. There you go. They go to their class for placement testing, and then they do a placement test. So the whole process of going through the system is beyond easy. We have worked with several students every semester to make sure that the experience is first of all easy to use. We also secondly make sure it's a friendly interface, so that a lot of students who are using PTS haven't even gone to university yet. They're still in the summer before. They need a really easy, fluid experience, and that's what we try to do with our system. And I mean, a student, they log in, they go to their class, they do their placement test, and they're done. It's a very straightforward process. To show you how it works, they click on a placement test. they're told it's timed. If it's proctored, they can also have the option here to have a proctor authorize them to start. So this is for security purposes. If you want them to, have this page come up where they need a proctor to authorize them, they look at them, they verify their identity. The proctor can log in on their machine or do it, from a different place, and the student can begin their test. Some teachers choose, if they're doing the placement test from home, not to have this authorization process, but if they're doing it on campus, usually schools do this proctor authorization process. So that's just another security feature. But once they get authorized to take the test, they go through it. So here's question 1. They choose the answer. As I mentioned, everything is multiple choice from the MAA, and they keep responding. As you see here, here's the natural math or symbolic math, really easy to see, really easy to read. The plots are easy to see and read. And they just go through and respond to the questions. It's a really easy, self-explanatory process. Now when they're finished, they can click on Submit at the bottom here. They're notified if they have left any questions blank. So they can go back and provide answers. So if they accidentally skip a question, they won't just lose credit automatically. They will be told before they submit at the very end that they have left something blank. So for example here, click on Submit again, and you'll notice again, I've left other things blank, but for the purpose of this demonstration, I'll leave them blank. I think you get the idea of how a placement test works now in our system. They click on Submit, and they're taken to then a page that says thank you. And this is the page that can be customized from the teacher's point of view. By default, the MAA simply says thank you. They don't give feedback to the students. When they do a written placement test, they simply take the test and the student doesn't see it again. But you can give them more feedback. You can give them a score. You can tell them what to do based off their score. You can show them which questions they got right and wrong. You can show them the solutions if you'd like to. But all that can be customized on a per student basis. But that is the student experience in Placement Test Suite. Like I mentioned before, it's straightforward. It's easy to use. There isn't any complicated hoops the student has to jump through just to access a placement test. But let me now talk about the different features from a teacher's perspective. So as a teacher, you have different options here in the menu bar here. So you have, first going back to the system homepage, you can create different classes. So if you want to use separate classes for different placement tests, you can do so. Some schools will have one single class, and every student just goes to that class, whether it's a couple hundred or a couple thousand. They just go to one single class, and they all do their placement test in the same location. Other schools split them up by major. So if you're a math student, you're in class A. If you're a science, you're in class B. If you're engineering, you're class C, and so forth. Or maybe you do it by their family name. So students whose last name begins with an A through M are in class 1, or if their last name starts with an N through Z, they're in class 2. Again, your choice. It's how you organize it and where students go is totally up to you. You can also here create the users. I already mentioned this before, but you can add them individually. You can import them from an existing roster file from Excel, or the system in the menu here is when you change some of the system settings. Now, at the class level, you have different options for the class itself. So you here choose the users in your class. So you can register users, you can remove users, you can import them, again using a roster file from Excel. Pretty straightforward stuff here. The Proctor Tools area, this is where you go to give special permissions to students. Maybe they need a time extension because they have a disability. Maybe they missed the placement testing period because they were sick or had a family emergency. Or maybe they had an attempt that they had to leave halfway through, so you want to give them re-entry and a certain specific amount of time back. You can do all that through the Proctor Tools area. Content repository, this is where all the content is stored in Maple TA for the placement test suite. So here under assignments, this is all of the pre-made placement tests from the MAA. And they all have 4 keywords in the title. The first word is either skills or concepts, depending on the type of test that you have and you're going to deliver. The second word is the subject, or the topic. Is it calculus readiness? Is it high school? Is it trigonometry and elementary functions? The third word is right now it's always multiple choice. The MAA are working on what I would call free response, where the questions are not multiple choice. It might be an area where they type in a math equation or a formula, or a number. Those are still in development, but will be available as soon as possible, as soon as they're done doing some field testing and verification. And the last word is either algorithmic or static, depending on the type of test and whether it's algorithmic or static. And along with that is also a form number, which is provided to you from the MAA. This corresponds to the actual code of the placement test, kind of relates also to the written based ones as well. But these are all tests that you can click on and see the questions involved, and you can even print off a paper-based version, or as you see here, I can even edit this test. So I can change here, which questions will be in this placement test. I can remove some or add some. I can also set the policy. So by default, I can, they have their things here. So whether it's a time test like you see here, it's a homework test, so the results are stored. You can change these things. You can make it a anonymous practice test. So they can take it as many times as they want just for practice. You can give them additional attempts if you want. You can choose to randomize the order of the questions. You can make it a proctor test. You can define here the number of attempts, change the time limit, the passing score, in terms of scheduling visibility. When is it actually available to the students? Is there a start date and end date? Can you restrict feedback until a certain date? Perhaps you also want to force grade all the assignments if they're halfway through it at the very end of the testing period. But we also have all these feedback options. So will you show hints? Will you show the current grade? Will you allow them to resubmit questions and go back and check answers? Will you, at the very end, show them their final grade, or show them the correct answers, or give them question feedback? You can make changes to all this stuff as much as you want. We don't force you to use these a certain manner. You have complete control over the content once you purchase the placement test suite. And lastly, we also have the gradebook. Let me go to a different class to show you some gradebook features here. So in the gradebook, you can search for class grades. Let's say I want to see results for homework test 1, 2, and 3. Click on search, and within seconds, I have results at the bottom of my screen for those 3 tests for all the students in my class. I can, of course, customize the view. Maybe I want to see, percentage grades, and I want to see their student ID, but not their given name, but also the start date. Click on search, and notice it all updates below. So here is the start date for each test. Here is their grade in percentage format. Here is their student ID, but not their given name. And then whatever I have here, I can always export to a CSV file to use in Microsoft Excel or some other area that supports CSV files. But this goes a couple levels deep. Here I can click on the actual grade of a student and see their entire assignment. So what was their responses? What was the feedback they received? I can append feedback here as well. I can add comments or something that the student can read at a later time in their own personal gradebook. The gradebook also has item stats, so I can click on a homework item, click on search, and I get stats for the test. So things like the success rate, the different values and binomial coefficients, the count. So how many times has the question been taken and marked correct or incorrect or partially correct? And we also have this item called grade reports. This is where you can actually create a report and load it. And it gives the student a breakdown of the grade. This isn't exactly what you would use for maybe a placement testing experience, but it is possible for entire courses who want to use Maple TA. Now, one thing we also talked about was this integration feature through LTI. So if you want to integrate Maple TA into your existing course management system, what happens is if you have a course management system running, they will be directed directly to either the course homepage like you see here, or directly to the assignment itself. So like they would click on assignment and open it up. They can go right from their course management system directly to their assignment. So that's how it works through course management systems. Definitely, it's a very popular method for using our placement test suite, is to integrate it into your existing environment.